So I feel like a lot of dudes, a lot of guys really lack a sort of grasp and understanding of what it means to be a masculine man, all right, or just masculine in general, right? And don't get it twisted with like this whole idea of like being an alpha and all that corny stuff. I really don't think about those things at all. So when I started trying to figure out, well, what does it mean to be a masculine man, right? And I sort of interrogated it and I sort of experimented. And ultimately, what it is that a lot of people will try to capture this idea of masculinity by wearing a bunch of masks, right? Being a tough guy, being like a gym cell, right? Being a gym rat, or being a funny guy, or being rude, or being, being all these things, right? Like trying to get into character and whatnot. But the reality is, to be masculine is really to be able to express your essence, right? And whatever that looks like is really up to you, and it is entirely something that is within yourself. And and the way you find out what that is you need to be able to have had experiences that will be able to chisel and carve away at who you are, and to be able to cement and forge this identity, right? And one of the things that I really learned how to do, throughout this journey of trying to figure out what it means for me to be a masculine man, uh, was just figuring things out, right? And understanding that being okay with making mistakes. But the very first thing I learned was to learn how to say no. So I used to be the guy, I used to be like a yes man. I used to be the type of person that if someone asked me for a favor, even if I didn't want to do it, I would do it anyhow. The problem is you end up sacrificing yourself for someone else, and oftentimes it was not really worth it, and I didn't really get any respect, hardly any appreciation from any of those deeds. Now you have to obviously be able to differentiate, but never do something you don't want to do. Be very comfortable with saying no. I think that was one of the first real hard lessons I learned was and I got very comfortable with it, right? Like learning how to say no and actually enjoying um, yeah, just being able to put my foot down, exert myself, and say, "Well, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not willing to sacrifice myself in the process." The other thing is be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and I love irony, right? But this is super important. You have to be able to understand. Okay, picture this, right? You wake up, you're very hungry, you're in a bad mood, you're tired, right? And so even in those moments, you have to be able to execute. You have to be able to perform. It doesn't really matter how you feel, and no one's really gonna care. So this is all things that are happening internally. Okay, so you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Super important. The other thing is you have to embrace struggle. So many people that I talk to have a really hard time with understanding that that life is not supposed to be so easy, that it's not supposed to be, that everything's not going to go the way you had planned, that things will get difficult, and that you may not always be able to get the outcomes that you desire. But that isn't the point. I think the point is that you have to understand that there is nothing worthwhile that isn't difficult to attain. Okay, and this is why the idea of struggle is so important. And I guess maybe this has to do with the fact that I've always had a hard time doing anything. Nothing's been easy for me. And so because of that, anytime I would have hardships or whatever, anytime I would have slip ups, mistakes, failures, yeah, I would like mope and complain, but I knew that I was going to be able to get back up. I knew that there was going to be another opportunity to redeem myself and to make myself new and to remake myself, right, in a different light, through a different, a different experience, just a different opportunity to do something different. Yeah. The other thing is not having a filter. I think it's so important to be able to really find your voice and not be scared to express yourself. Yeah, there's people that are not gonna like it. Yes, there's people that will character assassinate you, but the reality is people can hate it, but they have to respect someone that is really who they are and is not afraid to say what they think, or who or any thoughts that you have. It doesn't matter, because the reality is if you're gonna try to people please, you're not gonna get very far. So super important to really avoid having a filter. Forget about having a filter. It's ridiculous. Um, the other thing is going back, and this is going back to that whole idea, but being okay with making mistakes is super important. And to be honest with you, I learned a lot of my mistakes were done like in public, in real life. Um, And they stuck with me, right? Because it's like, well, I never want to feel like this again. So I have to be aware of and self-reflective of the things that I've done wrong in the past and be able to redeem myself, and to make sure that I don't do this again. So I don't feel like that again. So that's always important. Is that the reality is like these sort of metaphorical scars, they stay with you, right? And the reason they stay with you is that so you make sure not to make the same mistakes over and over. Otherwise, you're not really learning to adapt, grow, and make better decisions over time. So that is super important. So forgetting about this whole idea of being like a alpha or a beta, more so tap into your essence of who you are. I mean, yeah, I mentioned some strategies, some things that you can do, but at the end of the day, to be a masculine man is really up to you how you want to carve that out and how that looks like. Um, yeah, don't try to follow like a cookie cutter formula because it's not gonna work that way. It's not really who you are, and you're always gonna revert back to your old ways. So I think if you're still struggling to figure that part out, you really need to think about who you are, what's your essence, who you really are as a person. And I think from there, you'll be able to find something that's authentic and it feels real to you. Because otherwise, I think people would see right through the nonsense. All right. But yeah, I hope this helps. I'll see you in the next one.